Week 1 of the 2024 college football season kicked off last night with a lot of games, but the game that most people have been talking about was the game between Colorado and North Dakota State, and that game did not disappoint. Colorado ultimately made enough big plays to win the game 31-26. Shedeur Sanders went off throwing for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, and 3 of which were to Travis Hunter, who was making impressive plays all night for all of the NFL scouts in attendance. Jimmy Horn Jr. also went off for 200 receiving yards, and he's a guy that doesn't get talked about enough. And overall, we saw a lot of exciting and great things from this Colorado team in week 1 like we expected. But let's not overreact. This team looks very similar to what it was last season. And there's a lot of concerning things I saw with this Colorado team, and they were 5 yards away from losing to an FCS team. North Dakota State is a really good FCS team, but they didn't even win the FCS National Championship last season. They have a whole new coaching staff. They have a lot of new starters. Colorado was more than a touchdown favorite in this game, and they couldn't even cover. North Dakota State has a great quarterback in Cam Miller who torched Colorado's defense all night. Cam Miller had 277 passing yards, and he also ran for 81 on the ground as well. And I have to say, Colorado looked very bad at the second and third level defensively, and that's something I cannot ignore. I will say I was a bit impressed with how the offensive line and defensive line for Colorado performed in that game. You could make an argument that Colorado was competitive at the line of scrimmage in that game. Outside of not being able to stop the quarterback run, the defensive line did a solid job at stopping the run, and they also had 2 sacks and 7 tackles for loss on the day. And offensively, they only gave up 1 sack. A lot of that you have to give credit to Shedeur Sanders, though. But they protected the quarterback well enough for Shedeur to put up the numbers he did. But another obvious and glaring issue that they had offensively was the fact that they couldn't even get a run game going. And once again, it looks like Colorado has a non-existent run game. Their rushing leader had 9 carries for 20 yards, and that was the transfer Dallin Hayden. They didn't have to run the ball in this game, but what happens when they go up against a good secondary that can at the very least contain their passing game? Because Colorado might be very one-dimensional offensively this year, just like they were last year. And Colorado also gave up 449 yards to North Dakota State. And it might be too early to tell, but I have to say Colorado really has a lot to clean up if they want to make a bowl game. They had a non-existent run game, they had terrible blown coverages, and they could not keep up with North Dakota State's receivers or quarterback Cam Miller all game. And Deion Sanders also showed that he cares more about his kid padding his stats than winning the game. They really tried to throw a fade route on second down when all they had to do was run the ball and the game would be over. It's honestly embarrassing. The clock management was horrible in that game, and because of that, North Dakota State was 5 yards away from winning that game after a successful Hail Mary attempt that ultimately came up short. It's easy for people to overreact and hype up all the incredible plays those Colorado receivers and Shedeur Sanders were making in that game, but any real college football fan knows that Colorado didn't look like a great team last night. They have a couple incredible players, but the rest of the team is not that good. And they also look like a very undisciplined team. They had a couple of dumb penalties, and the clock management was absolutely horrible. There were some great things that came out of that win, and also a lot of concerning things that came out of that win for Colorado. And I'm just pointing out the obvious. But I will give props to Colorado for playing a solid second half game and ultimately pulling out the win in the end. I'm definitely not saying Colorado is a good football team, but good football teams always find ways to win games. But I also can't tell you Colorado looked like a bad football team, because North Dakota State has an all-time winning record against FBS teams, and they are a pretty good FCS team, and it's only week 1. There's still a lot we need to learn about these two teams, but I can definitely say Colorado is going to have a great passing attack this year, and that is a given. But I also can't tell you that Colorado is going to take any step forward from last year and be a good football team. Congratulations on the victory, but Colorado didn't impress me as an overall team in this win. And next week, you guys play a much better team at the line of scrimmage in the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and they are also a way better team defensively. And you also play in Lincoln, Nebraska for that game, and they are a team that is 4 deep at running back and could easily find success running the ball if Colorado's front 7 isn't that good. So I'm interested to see how that Colorado defensive line holds up, but let's not forget Nebraska has a much better quarterback situation heading into 2024, with the 5-star true freshman Dylan Raiola starting. The only reason Colorado beat Nebraska last season was because Nebraska had absolutely terrible quarterback play. And Nebraska has more weapons at wide receiver heading into this season. They have a bunch of guys returning, and Colorado could definitely be in trouble next week. Nebraska is in a much better place heading into year 2 with Matt Rule as head coach. And Colorado is basically playing a better version of North Dakota State next week, and it will be a tough road environment for Colorado as well. And if Dylan Raiola could play a solid, not even a great game, then I think Nebraska should win this game pretty comfortably. Nebraska is a disciplined football team with a lot of experience and a great coaching staff. And Colorado fans may look at last season's victory, but this is a new year and you guys were lucky Nebraska didn't have a quarterback in last year's game. And if Colorado can show some good things in next week's game and pull out the win, then maybe I'll believe in this Colorado team a bit more. But right now it looks like the ceiling of this team is likely a bowl game, and maybe building your roster through a bunch of 3 and 4-star transfers does not work. You have a whole new starting offensive line, and how are you going to expect good play from your offensive line when you have new starters every single year? Nebraska will match up much better with Colorado defensively, and I am excited to see that matchup between Colorado's offense and Nebraska's defense. But I just hope for a great game, and it will be one of the more interesting games of Week 2. And I also want to give a shout out to North Carolina in a hard-fought victory over Minnesota on the road. Despite Max Johnson getting injured, they came back and won the game, and I have to say North Carolina showed some promise defensively. North Carolina has been a pretty bad team defensively over the last couple of years, but that defense did look a lot more physical and improved. But the quarterback situation doesn't look great for North Carolina, and I was expecting that, and the offense does have some concerns. But a win is a win, and that North Carolina defense really stepped up in that game. And also give a shout out for North Carolina's kicker kicking 4 field goals. Minnesota didn't have their star running back Darius Taylor in that game, and that is unfortunate, and they also had multiple missed field goals. So they did have some things not go their way in that game, but I also thought I saw some solid things from Minnesota in that game. The defense is definitely a strength, and they do have some guys at wide receiver who can make plays. And Minnesota also has a new starter at quarterback who showed promise in that game. So I am interested to see what Minnesota can do this season, and maybe a bowl game is in the cards. But that was definitely a tough Week 1 loss for PJ Fleck and the Minnesota Gophers. And outside of those two games, there's not a lot to take away from the Thursday night games. Arkansas managed to put up 70 points on an FCS team, and the quarterback and running back duo of Taylor Green and Jaquindon Jackson is a duo to watch out for. And maybe Arkansas could be a sleeper in the SEC with Bobby Petrino running the offense. And I also was surprised with how close Western Carolina played NC State yesterday. NC State is my sleeper team in the ACC, and I actually have them making the ACC championship game, but they were actually losing to Western Carolina heading into the fourth quarter 21-17. Grayson McCall had some tough first game struggles for NC State, and the offense didn't have a great Week 1 performance, but they did turn it up in the fourth quarter and win by multiple scores, and the running back Jordan Waters had 2 big touchdown runs. I still like this NC State team with all of the offensive weapons, and they also have a good head coach and a trustworthy defense. So I'm not giving up on this NC State team yet, even after a disappointing performance against Western Carolina, because it's still only Week 1. But I'm definitely interested to see how they play against Tennessee next week, because that's a big game for them. It's great to have college football back, and Colorado is definitely going to be a fun team to watch this year. Shedeur Sanders and that offense is a highlight reel. But I have to admit, Colorado has a lot to clean up, and they might be in for another tough year. But anyways, that is going to do it for today's video. Let me remind you guys to like the video, and also subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you will love this channel, because we upload a ton of college football content, and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing. And also consider checking out my socials down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.